What's up, Barefoot Nation? Have you guys ever wanted to build a waterfall, but you're curious about how they form in nature, and you want to make it look completely natural even though you're building it? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Stay tuned! One of the most important things when you guys are building a water feature is to make sure that it looks amazing from the house. And then of course it looks even better at night, but it's no good to have your waterfall flowing away from your viewing area because during the winter months, if you guys live in a colder climate, it's definitely not comfortable to be outside enjoying your waterfall. So being able to look at it and enjoy it from indoors is just as important. The other thing to keep in mind is that as much as you might try to design your water feature on paper, to create a natural waterfall is a very fluid, organic process that just simply is hard to capture on paper. And my design for this water feature on paper is very different from what actually went into the ground. There were several changes that I decided to forego just because of how the build happened. When you're designing your water feature, it's important to consider where you want your waterfall and the positioning of it from the very beginning of the design process. Here you can see the excavation of my pond. So basically, when you're building a waterfall, you have 3 stones that you need to consider. And that is a frame rock on each side, as you can see in the picture, and then a spill stone in between. And you can see that even the lower split waterfall going into the pond is following that same premise. It's just that the frame rock for both sides is basically just curving around the same stone, so you get 2 waterfalls that share the same frame rock. And here you can see me playing around with different boulders to figure out which stones will make the perfect natural looking waterfall. So here you can see the finished result. Basically, both frame rocks, one on each side, are not that they have to be, but they're roughly in proportion to each other. And then the spillway stone in the middle, although that might be a little bit low, I kind of compensated for that by putting that root over the top of the waterfall. In addition to the fact that adding wood to your water features, not just your waterfalls, always, especially when it's incorporated in and not just chucked in there, is always going to make your waterfalls look more natural. And you can get a good idea during the winter time, just the little details of your waterfall too. Like notice this little cutout here, this natural joint between the 2 rocks is perfect for having a little detail falls like that, which was absolutely not planned in the waterfall but worked out beautifully. So one of the most important things when building your waterfall is remembering to foam. So basically what you're going to do, and there's not really any void space anymore, so basically what you're going to do is you're going to take your can of foam. I always use Aquascape stuff because it cures the fastest. And guys, I need to warn you about waterfall foam. If you're doing this for the first time, be sure to wear clothes that you don't care about and have gloves and maybe even eye protection, because this stuff will stick to your nails, it'll stick to your clothes. Look, I still have a pair of jeans that has this frickin' patch of waterfall foam on it that I can't get out. So, it's necessary, but be warned. You're gonna take this little foam gun and you're gonna go in there and foam the hell out of all of these cracks. Now you see gravel here because that's how I naturalized it, but I'll show you photos. So here you can see the final selection of boulders. You'll notice all these large gaps in the cracks of the stones. That's what you fill with the waterfall foam. Just be sure that you level use a level to level the spillway stone so that the water doesn't go from one side or the other, which in most cases is a good thing to do. Now, if there's a stone where that would look good, that's a different story, but in this case, that spillway stone had to be level. Foam is not a sealant. All that this foam does is force the water over the top of the rocks as opposed to the water going directly behind it. all the places it's not really supposed to be in. So basically, this foam is not going to fix leaks because it's porous. But, so basically guys, you're gonna wanna take this foam gun and you're gonna wanna spray all throughout, wherever you see a gap. Basically, wherever you see gravel, there's foam. And I also went under the stones and these gaps, and this is all foam, and it's been naturalized, of course, with moss, and I foamed the hell out of it. Now remember guys, this foam does expand, so you don't want to go too much. You want to let it have the space to expand, so that once you have this area full of foam, and then you're gonna tamp it down, get it molded into the crevices, and then you're gonna naturalize it on top with either gravel, dirt, or moss. Moss is fantastic for naturalizing waterfalls because it doesn't have a root system really, or it's a very small root system. So you can literally take your section of moss and stick it to the foam, and as the foam is expanding, it'll cling to the moss, and then of course it's porous, so it stays wet all the time and it's in contact with water. And then you get really cool effects like that, like the moss starting to crawl up that. Another thing to keep in mind with foaming is that on this particular waterfall, I only have the main falls foamed and nothing else. Now that works because this is a short little stream, but if you have a long stream, anything to where the water really has a long ways to go before it gets to either the basin of your pondless or the pond, you're definitely going to want to continue to foam the cracks of each stone and stuff like that, and making sure that you're not losing that water flow. The other thing to remember with building your waterfall is that you want to have, so the falls right here is very important with making sure that everything's foamed in, but you also want to pay close attention to how the water, if you're doing a pond, goes into the pond or into the basin if it's a pondless waterfall. One of the most important things is to actually consider how the waterfall is going to look. So basically you're leaving a space. I left a space basically from where you see this big boulder right here, right to the over here, and that was this whole open section of liner. I left all that open in order to have creative freedom with building the waterfall. It's important to remember also guys to leave space for plants in your waterfall, like that sensitive fern right there. Now that's actually planted in the water, and then I have those other two you can see on the bank right there and right there to actually grow into a mass planting and look like it's naturalized. In addition to adding deciduous plants like those sensitive ferns that normally grow right there in your waterfall, you may consider, if you live in a cold winter climate, to add evergreen stuff like this Japanese Acorus here, hardy to zone 5, and this royal purple lily turf. Interestingly enough, lily turf absolutely grows well in the water, not only in streams especially, but also in the pond. You can see that this is actually a plant right there that's directly in the water behind the stone. You eventually will develop the muscle to see that, you know, okay, this is a spill rock because I like how the water will shoot off of it relatively easily, and stuff like that. It's like you'll develop a muscle to do this and to have these waterfalls look better and better. It's important also to note that this waterfall is 10 inches high, and these waterfalls are about 3 inches high, so you don't need to have, especially if you have a flat backyard, you don't need to have a 2-foot, 3-foot tall waterfall to have an impact. Because as tall as that waterfall is, you need to have stone that big to naturalize it, which these stones here average about 100 pounds. I think the lightest, like, big boulder type in this waterfall is this one right here, which probably weighed, if I remember, well, I don't remember, but it was manageable. It was the most manageable boulder in the waterfall. So I've been talking a lot about the aesthetics of your waterfall, but all of that really doesn't matter if it leaks. The most important thing you can do with your waterfall is making sure that your liner is high enough, and conversely then how to naturalize it so that you don't so that it looks awesome and that it doesn't leak. So you can see here that my water level goes to right about there, and you can see just a little piece of the liner peeking out right there. And now it does kind of get squished, so although it's high right there, you need to make sure that it's consistent the whole way around. Now, the fact that this is a nice flat rock, I do step on it on a regular basis, just as I walk around and interact with my garden. So I'm gonna check on that next spring to make sure that the liner doesn't get squished down and then you get a low edge and it leaks. A low edge is by far the most common form of a leak in a pond, and simply a low edge is just that the water finds a way out. And another thing to keep in mind, guys, is that if you guys aren't completely in love with your waterfall when it's done, rip it apart, and redo it, and just play around until you get it absolutely perfect. Trust me that it's worth to rip it apart and redo it and have it absolutely perfect to where that's all you want to do is stare at your waterfall. Alright guys, if you want to see more content just like this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop it a big ol' thumbs up. And let me know down in the comments if you guys have different techniques that work well for naturalizing waterfalls for you. I'm curious to hear them. Thanks for watching, y'all. I can't wait to see you on the next one.